Today we have another episode of Deconstruct, Inspect, and Duplicate. And what we will be looking at is the Sig 220 grain Subsonic 300 Blackout ammunition. So, if you're curious about this ammunition, stick around. Alright, welcome back to CloverTac, where we chain fire freedom. I'm Chris Dover, and today we are going to deconstruct, inspect, and attempt to duplicate, or look at a duplication recipe rather, for the Sig 220 grain, flip it around to the right side here, 220 grain subsonic ammunition for 300 Blackout. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to get a quick measurement on the overall cartridge length here before we look at the deconstructed round. We will look at a live round here. Make sure our caliper is 0. It is. Let's look at the overall length on this. This is a really long projectile they use. It looks like we're going to be about 2115. That's 2.115. Get my caliper here. I'll turn it around the right way for you. And if you remember from our video, or we went over how to read these, that's 1. It's going to be an inch. 2, 2.1, and then 15. Okay. So keep that in mind. I will have some notes down there for you in the description. Also have some links, most likely to some of the equipment here, as well as the ammunition itself. So I've got the round deconstructed here. You can see there's the brass, and here is the projectile. Let's talk about the projectile first. This is going to be a 220 grain Sierra Match King. See the match tip there, probably. The match hollow point. What's a little bit unique about this is it's cantilevered. See the ring here around, not this ring, that's from where I pulled the bullet, but right here it's called a cantilever. So I don't know if the new 220 grain Match Kings come cantilevered or not, or if they're doing that specifically for Sig, but either way, that's going to be the projectile. I do not have a single 220 grain Match King to show you. Unfortunately, these became rare a couple of years ago. Myself, I went straight into shooting in the heavy stuff and the subsonic cast projectiles, and only recently began shooting these again, so I haven't acquired any. And if you notice in the Nomad Tactical Shoot House video that I have up, I was shooting this Sig Subsonic ammo. Larry's ThermalSuppressor.com. Be sure to check them guys out. Gave us the ammo to deconstruct and look at. So we've got it taken apart here, and let's weigh this projectile real quick. It's going to weigh out around 220. There's no doubt about it, but we'll throw it on here just to make sure. And we're looking at about 220.2. I don't know if you can see that in the camera or not because of the glare. It's faint, so it's definitely a 220 projectile. Okay, now one thing that we're going to have, obviously, if we're loading this ammunition, is we're going to have to take a look at the primer here. Here's one that's been fired, and this is the cartridge I've got that we deconstructed. And I honestly don't know what it is. Probably going to be just a typical small rifle primer. Okay. I would say CCI if I was guessing. But I'm going to tell you something that I like to shoot in my blackouts, especially in an AR platform. CCI makes a military grade. It's called a 5.56 primer. It's a CCI number 41. That's the one I like. It's a little harder primer, so you run less of a risk of a slam fire. But if all you have is a CCI small rifle, those should get you by, or probably any other small rifle primer as well. You'll see I've got two pans down here. These pans are actually lids off of powder jugs, which are, by the way, a really good way to repurpose those lids. And I'm curious, just looking at the powder and knowing what I load my subsonics with, which is accurate 1680. That's sort of what it looks like. It's got a little bit of sparkle to it, size of the grain, and I know you can't see it in the camera there. I'm sure it's so small it's hard to tell, but it's what it looks like. Okay, and I'll show you the measurement here on it. We'll weigh it out just so you know I'm not making up numbers. Let's get our pan on here. And pour. Well, we've got 11 grains there in the one that we deconstructed. Now, of course, it just jumped to 10.9. Now it's back to 11, but 11 grains. Now, having experience loading subsonics in 300 Blackout, I can tell you that 11 grains is right about the point that you generally want your 1680, depending on the projectile you're using. So none of this is, to me anyway, is shocking. And again, we kind of compare the two there, volume wise in the pan. I've already measured this out. It's 11 grains as well. Let's tell you what, just to make sure, I don't want you to think that I'm fibbing the numbers. I know you guys out there, my loyal viewers, trust me, but there may be some that don't. So let's throw this on the scale, show you that it is 11 grains. Unless my scale's jinky and it shows a little different, and it doesn't. It shows 11 grains. So we're good there. See, not lying to you. 11 grains. The volume looks pretty close. The type of powder looks pretty close. Everything stands to logic with loading subsonics in 300 Blackout. But there's one other test that I want to make. And for that test, I'm going to use a little Durlin punch. And this is going to be, unfortunately, a trust me test, but we're going to do it nonetheless. What we're going to do is we're going to pour these powders back into cases here. This is the one we deconstructed. This is actually a Sig case that has been fired. It's the same. I've measured them out, measured the same. We're going to pour it in there. The 1680 powder here we're going to pour in there like so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure, just get a rough measurement anyway. I would use my caliper there and try to do it, but that powder is so fine it's probably not going to work. So I'm going to use this punch. I'm going to take the original, I'm going to set the punch down on there. I'm not going to press, I'm just going to set it down in there, and I'm going to mark it with my thumbnail. And I got to do this straight up, so you're not going to be able to watch. So I got my thumbnail, and it goes in that far before we get powder. Okay. Now, do the same thing here. I'm going very, very lightly until I start catching tension. I've got tension, and I'm right there at my thumbnail. So that tells me that the volume between these two powders is very, very similar as well. You know, is this powder they use for Sig uses for Blackout, is it 1680? I haven't found any data that says it is. But looking at shape, consistency, volume, weight, and comparing the two, I think it would make a pretty good duplicate load, to be honest with you. All the numbers seem to fall right there into place. So that's it for doing the deconstruct, inspect, and looking at duplication options on the Sig 220 grain Subsonic 300 Blackout ammunition. I want to thank you guys for watching, and until next time, remember to chain fire freedom. Thanks again for watching. If you liked the video, give us a thumbs up. If you think we're doing a good job here on CloverTac, don't forget to subscribe. And if you would like to support us, you can do so by going to CloverTac.com and shopping with one of our awesome affiliates or sponsors.